The train rattled through the heart of Maine, cutting through forests that stood like silent sentinels against the winter sky. Snow fell in lazy spirals, clinging to the windows before melting into nothing. Inside the nearly empty car, James Mitchell sat alone, his weathered hands gripping a manila envelope that had arrived at his Phoenix apartment 3 weeks ago. The envelope bore the letterhead of Whitmore and Associates, attorneys at law, Willowbrook, Maine, the same town he had sworn never to see again. 52 years of living showed in the lines around his eyes, in the silver threading through his close-cropped hair, in the way his shoulders carried an invisible weight, the kind of weight that came from 2 tours in Iraq, from 18 years of marriage that ended in divorce papers signed across a kitchen table, from 3 years of silence between himself and his only son. But the heaviest weight, the one he had carried for 34 years, was the weight of words never spoken between a father and a son. Robert Mitchell, Bobby to those who knew him. Dead 3 months now, buried in Willowbrook Cemetery, while James had been installing electrical panels in a strip mall 2,000 miles away. The lawyer's letter had been brief, clinical. Your father passed on October 15th. Services held October 18th. Estate requires settling. Your presence requested at earliest convenience. James had not gone to the funeral. He told himself it was because of work, because the flight was too expensive, because 34 years of silence was too vast a canyon to cross for a man already in the ground. But in the darkest hours of the night, when sleep refused to come and memories pressed against him like physical things, he knew the truth. He had been afraid that standing at his father's grave would crack open something inside him that he had spent 3 decades keeping sealed. The train slowed as it approached Willowbrook Station. Through the frosted window, James saw the town emerge from the white landscape, like something from a half-remembered dream. The church steeple still leaned slightly to the left, just as it had when he was a boy. The old mill building stood empty, its windows' dark eyes staring at nothing. Main Street stretched out in both directions, lined with buildings that looked tired, worn down by years and winters, and the quiet exodus of young people seeking bigger dreams in bigger places. He stepped onto the platform, his Marine Corps duffel slung over one shoulder. The cold hit him like a fist, stealing his breath. Phoenix winters were nothing like this. This was the kind of cold that found its way into your bones, that made you remember you were alive by making you hurt. The station was nearly deserted. An elderly woman sat on a bench, knitting something shapeless and gray. She glanced up as he passed, her eyes narrowing in recognition or curiosity. James could not tell which. He did not stop to find out. His boots crunched through fresh snow as he made his way toward the taxi stand, where a single cab sat idling, exhaust rising in white clouds. The driver was a young man, maybe 25, who barely looked at James as he climbed in. "Where to?" "Maple Lane, the old Mitchell place." The driver's eyes found him in the rearview mirror, a flicker of recognition passing across his face. "Bobby Mitchell's place? I heard he passed. You family?" "Son." The word felt strange in his mouth, foreign after all these years of not claiming it. "Sorry for your loss." James said nothing. What could he say? That loss implied you once had something, that you could not lose what you had already thrown away 34 years ago. They drove through town in silence, past the diner where James had worked summers bussing tables, saving money for a future he thought would take him away from this place forever. Past the high school where he had lettered in football and baseball, where Sarah Thompson had kissed him behind the bleachers and told him she loved him, where 3 months later she had told him she was pregnant and he had told her he was enlisting anyway. Past the recruiting office where Staff Sergeant Coleman had looked at him with knowing eyes and said, "You running from something or running to something, son?" "Both," James had answered then. Neither, he understood now. Maple Lane appeared at the edge of town, a narrow road lined with oak trees whose bare branches formed a skeletal canopy overhead. The houses here sat far apart, each one claiming its own piece of earth, its own small kingdom of memory. The Mitchell place stood at the end of the lane, a 2-story colonial that Bobby had built with his own hands in the years after coming home from Central America. White paint peeling, shutters hanging crooked, porch sagging under the weight of 30 years and the absence of care. James paid the driver and stood in the snow-covered driveway, staring at the house. Smoke should have been rising from the chimney, His mother's station wagon should have been parked in the garage. His father should have been on the porch, hammer in hand, fixing something, always fixing something. But there was only silence, only snow, only a house that looked like it was holding its breath, waiting. He walked up the path, each step bringing back fragments of memory, running down the same path on summer evenings, chasing fireflies with his bare hands, falling on the ice one January morning, splitting his chin open, his father carrying him to the truck, pressing a dish towel against the wound while James cried, and Bobby's voice stayed steady, calm. "You're okay, son. You're okay. We all bleed. Don't make you weak. Makes you human." The front door was locked, but the lawyer had sent a key. James's hand shook as he fitted it into the lock. The door opened with a groan, revealing a darkness that smelled of dust and closed spaces and time standing still. He stepped inside. The living room stretched before him, frozen in a moment he remembered, but could no longer touch. The leather armchair where Bobby used to sit, reading the newspaper in the evenings. The bookshelf lined with hardcovers about World War II and carpentry and the history of the Marine Corps. The mantel where photographs stood in careful arrangement. James as a baby, held in his mother's arms. James at 10, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up his first caught fish. James at 17, in his dress blues at the recruiter's office, his face full of pride and certainty, and the kind of innocence that only exists before you understand what you have chosen. And then no more photographs. The wall of his life ended at 18, as if he had simply ceased to exist the day he left. James moved through the house like a ghost haunting his own past. The kitchen where his mother had made Sunday dinners, where the three of them had sat around the table in a silence that grew heavier each year after his mother's cancer diagnosis. The dining room where Bobby had done his bookkeeping, spreadsheets and receipts organized with the same precision he had brought to everything. The den where a television sat dark and a half-finished crossword puzzle lay on the coffee table, Bobby's reading glasses folded on top. James picked up the glasses. They were heavier than he expected. Everything here was heavier than he expected. The stairs to the second floor creaked under his weight, each step announcing his presence to a house that had learned to exist without him. His old bedroom was exactly as he had left it, the same navy blue bedspread, the same posters of Tom Seaver and the 1986 Red Sox, the same desk where he had written his college application essays to schools he never attended, the same window where he had climbed out 100 times to meet Sarah, to drink beer by the lake, to feel like he was living instead of just waiting. Bobby's room stood at the end of the hall. James hesitated at the threshold. This had been a sacred space when he was young. A room he entered only when summoned, when report cards needed signing or when punishment was to be delivered. But punishment had always been quiet with Bobby. No yelling, no violence, just disappointment so profound it felt like drowning. He pushed open the door. The room was spare, monastic almost. A bed made with military precision, corners tucked so tight you could bounce a quarter off the blanket. A dresser with nothing on top except a lamp and a photograph in a simple frame. James picked up the photograph. It showed a young Bobby, maybe 23 or 24, in marine dress blues, standing at attention with that 1,000-yard stare that marked men who had seen things they could never speak about. El Salvador, 1983. The closet held clothes that smelled faintly of sawdust and Old Spice. Work shirts, all flannel, all well-worn. Pants, jeans, everything practical, nothing decorative. On the top shelf, a locked metal box. James recognized it immediately. His father's Marine Corps footlocker, the one that had sat at the end of Bobby's bed for as long as James could remember, the one James had never been allowed to touch. He pulled it down, surprised by its weight. The lock was old, a simple combination mechanism. He tried his birthday, 0815. Nothing. He tried his mother's birthday. Nothing. He tried the day they buried her. 0612. The lock clicked open. Inside, the smell of old canvas and gun oil and memory. A folded American flag, the kind they gave you at military funerals. A bronze star in its presentation case. A purple heart. James's hands moved slowly, reverently, touching each item as if it might disintegrate at his touch. His father had never spoken about these medals, had never displayed them. James had not even known they existed. Beneath the medals, a thick envelope, his name written across it in his father's blocky handwriting. James Mitchell. The paper was yellowed at the edges, the ink faded in places. This had been written some time ago. James sat on the edge of his father's bed and opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, several pages of lined paper, the kind ripped from a legal pad. The handwriting was shakier than the name on the envelope, as if written by someone whose strength was failing. "Son," the letter began, "if you are reading this, I am gone. I know we have not spoken in 34 years. That is my fault, not yours. I have carried that weight every day since you left, and I will carry it to my grave. But there are things you need to know. Things I could not tell you when I was alive because I made promises. Promises to people who saved my life, who trusted me with secrets that were not mine to tell." James's vision blurred. He blinked hard, forced himself to keep reading. "I know you thought I did not understand why you joined the Marines. You thought I was a coward, afraid of my own service. You were wrong. I was afraid for you. I knew what war does. I knew what it takes and what it leaves behind. I did not want that for you. But you went anyway, and I let you go without telling you the truth about why I begged you not to. There is a room in the attic. Behind the wall on the north side, the combination is your birthday, 0815. Inside that room are documents, photographs, recordings. They will tell you things about me that will change how you see me. Maybe you will hate me more. Maybe you will understand. I do not know which would be worse, but I need you to know this. Everything I did because I believed it was right, not legal, not safe, not smart, but right. And I paid the price for that belief every day of my life. I lost the woman I loved. I lost years with you. I lost the chance to tell you I was proud of you, that seeing you in your uniform, even though it broke my heart, made me prouder than any father has a right to be. I am sorry, James, for everything, for the silence, for the distance, for not being the father you deserved. But I hope, when you see what is in that room, you will understand that sometimes being a good man means carrying secrets. Sometimes it means letting people think the worst of you, to protect them from the truth. The attic is waiting. So is the truth. What you do with it is up to you. Your father, Robert Mitchell. October 10, 2023, 5 days before he died. James folded the letter with hands that would not stay steady. His throat felt tight, his chest compressed. In his mind, fragments of memory collided. Bobby at the kitchen table, head in his hands. The night they told him the cancer had spread. Bobby at the hospital, holding his wife's hand as she took her last breath. Bobby standing on the porch the day James left, not saying goodbye, not saying anything, just watching as the taxi pulled away. And now this, a letter, an apology, an invitation to understand. James stood. The attic entrance was in the hallway ceiling, a square panel with a pull cord. He had not been up there since he was 12, when he had sneaked up looking for Christmas presents and found only boxes of old tools and his mother's wedding dress sealed in plastic. He pulled the cord. The panel opened with a groan, and a folding ladder descended, releasing a cascade of dust that hung in the air like tiny galaxies. James climbed slowly, each rung protesting under his weight. The attic was dark, close. A single bulb hung from a rafter, and James pulled the chain, flooding the space with weak yellow light. Boxes lined the walls, labeled in his mother's neat handwriting. Christmas decorations, baby clothes, tax records, 1975 through 1985. The accumulation of a life, sorted and stored and forgotten. But on the north wall, something different. The boards there looked newer, the wood lighter. James moved closer, running his hand along the surface. It looked solid, part of the original structure. But when he pressed against it, he heard a hollow echo. He searched the seam where wall met floor, found a small metal ring recessed into the wood. He pulled, and a section of the wall swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a keypad mounted on the frame. The numbers glowed faint green in the darkness. 0, 8, 1, 5. The lock clicked. The hidden door swung open. James stepped inside. The room was small, maybe 6 feet by 8 feet. barely tall enough to stand in, but it was packed. Shelves lined 3 walls, filled with document boxes, binders, photograph albums. A filing cabinet stood in the corner, and on the back wall, hung with careful reverence, a flag. Not American. The blue and white stripes with the coat of arms of El Salvador. James's breath caught. His father had served in Central America. Everyone knew that. Bobby had been there in the early 80s, military advisor, training government forces. But he had never spoken about it, never told war stories, never joined the VFW, never went to reunions. That time, for Bobby Mitchell, had been a door closed and locked and never reopened. Until now. James pulled down this first box. Inside, photographs, dozens of them, some in color but most faded and creased. Bobby in combat fatigues, younger than James had ever seen him, standing with other Americans in front of sandbags and razor wire. Bobby shaking hands with local militia members. Bobby at a mountain village, surrounded by children with wide, dark eyes. And then a photograph that made James's heart stop. Bobby, maybe 25, standing beside a woman. She was beautiful, with long dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold entire universes. In her arms, a baby, maybe 2 or 3 months old, wrapped in a pink blanket. Bobby's arm was around the woman's shoulders, and he was smiling. Actually smiling. In a way James had never seen his father smile. A smile of pure, unguarded joy. James turned the photograph over. Written on the back in faded ink, Rosa and Ana, San Salvador, December 1983. Rosa and Ana. James set the photograph down carefully, his mind racing. Who were they? Why had Bobby kept this hidden? Why had he never mentioned them? He opened another box. Documents this time, military records, personnel files, a birth certificate, yellowed with age. Name, Ana Rosa Mitchell, born October 3rd, 1983. San Salvador, El Salvador. Mother, Rosa Maria Flores. Father, Robert James Mitchell, USMC. The room tilted. James gripped the shelf to steady himself. His father had a daughter born in Central America. A daughter he had never mentioned, which meant James had a sister. A sister who would be, 41 now, if she was still alive. He fumbled through more documents, his hands shaking, letters, dozens of them, addressed to various government agencies, the State Department, Immigration Services, congressmen's offices, all dated between 1985 and 1990, all with the same desperate message: please help me find my daughter. Please help me bring her home. James sank to the floor, his back against the filing cabinet. The pieces were assembling themselves in his mind, forming a picture he had never imagined. His father, young and in love with a woman from El Salvador, a daughter born in the chaos of civil war. And then what? Bobby rotating home, the violence escalating, the thousands caught in the crossfire. He opened a leather-bound journal, the pages brittle with age. Bobby's handwriting, younger and steadier than the letter upstairs. June 15th, 1985. The country is falling apart. The death squads are killing anyone suspected of leftist sympathies. Rosa's family has been targeted because they ran a school in the wrong neighborhood. I tried to get them out through official channels, but there is too much red tape, too many people ahead in line. Rosa and Ana are somewhere in the city, hiding, and I cannot reach them. I have failed them. I have failed my daughter. This will haunt me until the day I die. The words blurred. James pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes, but it did no good. The tears came anyway, silent and burning. He had spent 34 years thinking his father was cold, unfeeling, incapable of the kind of love that broke you open. He had been wrong. Bobby had loved so much it had destroyed him. Had loved so much he had spent 40 years trying to make it right. James wiped his eyes and kept reading. Entry after entry, year after year. Bobby's attempts to find Rosa and Ana through official channels, through refugee organizations, through anyone who might help. The dead ends, the false leads, the hope that died a little more each year but never quite extinguished. And then in 1990, something changed. The handwriting became rushed, excited. March 22nd, 1990. I have been contacted by a man named Frank Delgado. He served with me in El Salvador, 1982 to 1984. He has been working with an organization, unofficial, helping Central American refugees get to the United States through back channels. It is dangerous. It is illegal. But it might be my only chance. Frank says he can help me find Anna. I have to try, no matter the cost. James turned the pages, his heart pounding. More entries, more details. An organization called Operation Safe Haven, run by veterans who had left families behind in Central America. A network of safe houses, forged documents, smuggled border crossings. Dangerous, illegal, necessary. And Bobby had been part of it. For 8 years, from 1990 to 1998, his father had used this house, the house where James had grown up, as a way station for refugees. Dozens of people had passed through, sleeping in the attic, in the basement, anywhere Bobby could hide them until they could be moved to the next safe house, the next step toward new lives. James pulled out another box, found newspaper clippings. Headlines from the late 80s and early 90s. Central American refugee crisis continues. Children of war struggle to find homes. Immigration crackdown targets illegal entries. And then, a photograph that made his breath catch. Bobby, older now, maybe late 40s, standing on the front porch of this house. Beside him, a woman. Not young Rosa from the earlier photos, but older, worn, her hair streaked with gray. And beside her, a young woman, maybe 22, with Bobby's sharp jaw and Rosa's dark eyes. The caption, written in Bobby's handwriting, Anna and Rosa, home at last, November 1992. James stared at the photograph. His father had found them. After 7 years of searching, he had found them and brought them here, to this house, to America. When would that have been? James would have been, 20, 21? Already in the Marines, already deployed, already gone. A noise from downstairs jolted him back to the present. Footsteps on the porch, the creak of the front door opening. Hello, anyone here? A male voice, older, familiar in a way James could not quite place. James climbed down from the attic, his mind still reeling. Standing in the living room was a man in his late 60s, gray-haired, solidly built, wearing a faded Marine Corps jacket and holding a six-pack of beer. The man looked up, and recognition flashed across his weathered face. James Mitchell. I would know that stubborn jaw anywhere. You look just like your old man. Do I know you? Frank Delgado. I served with your father in El Salvador. Been living 3 houses down for the last 40 years. The name clicked. Frank Delgado, Operation Safe Haven. The letters, the journal entries, easy. Frank set the beer on the coffee table and studied James with eyes that had seen too much and forgotten too little. I heard you were in town. Figured you could use a drink. Also figured you probably found Bobby's stash by now. The room in the attic. James nodded slowly. You knew about it. I knew about all of it. I was part of it. Hell, I started it. Frank opened 2 beers, handed one to James. They stood in silence for a moment, 2 Marines separated by a generation, but bound by the same code, the same understanding that some things did not need explaining. Your father loved you, talked about you all the time, how you made it through Fallujah, how you earned your sergeant's stripes, how you reminded him of himself at that age. He never called, never wrote. No, he did not. You want to know why? James took a long pull of his beer. Yes. Frank sat in Bobby's chair, the leather creaking under his weight. Because he thought you hated him. Because the last words you said to him were that he was a coward for not wanting you to enlist. Because every time he picked up the phone to call you, he remembered the look on your face when you left, and he thought, what right do I have, to ask him for forgiveness when I am keeping secrets that could destroy everything he thinks he knows about me? James felt something crack inside his chest. Did he ever find peace with Rosa and Anna? Frank's expression softened. He found them. Brought them here in 1992. Rosa lived here until she got sick. Then Bobby moved her to California to be near Anna. Anna went to college, became a doctor. Bobby paid for everything, never asked for anything in return. When your mother died in 2010, Rosa came back. They spent Bobby's last years together. Not married, but together. As close to happy as a man like Bobby could get after carrying that much guilt. James's beer shook in his hand. He set it down before he dropped it. Where are they now? Rosa is in a care facility in San Jose, 82 years old. Anna lives in Seattle. She is a trauma surgeon, married, 2 kids. She knows about you. Bobby told her everything. She always wanted to meet you, but Bobby said it had to be your choice. And what would you choose if you were me? Frank stood, placed a hand on James's shoulder. I would choose to understand that your father was not perfect, that he made mistakes, that he loved 2 women in his life, your mother and Rosa, and it tore him apart trying to honor both. That he had 2 children, you and Anna, and he failed both of you in different ways. But he tried. God, James, he tried so hard. Every day of his life, he tried to make it right. Frank moved toward the door, then paused. There is more in that attic than family secrets. There are documents about Operation Safe Haven, names, dates, methods. If the wrong people found out, a lot of innocent people could get hurt. People who are living quiet lives now, people who deserve peace. Your father kept those secrets to protect them. Now that burden falls to you. He left, the door closing softly behind him. James stood alone in his father's house, surrounded by ghosts and choices. Upstairs, in the hidden room, lay the truth about his father's life. A truth that complicated everything. A truth that demanded understanding, forgiveness, wisdom. The snow fell harder outside, covering the world in white. James climbed the stairs again, pulled down the attic ladder, and ascended into the darkness. The hidden room waited, patient and full of voices that had been silent too long. He settled onto the floor, surrounded by boxes and photographs and the weight of 40 years of secrets. In his hand, another journal, this one from 1990. March 14th, 1990. James called today. First time in 2 years. He sounded different, harder. Iraq changed him. I can hear it in his voice. I wanted to tell him about Anna, about Rosa, about why I understand what war takes from you, but the words would not come. How do you tell your son that you have been lying to him his whole life? How do you ask for forgiveness when you do not deserve it? I told him I was proud of him instead. He said thank you and hung up. It is not enough. It will never be enough. But it is all I can give him right now. James closed the journal. Outside, night had fallen completely. The house creaked and settled around him, full of memory and silence. Tomorrow, he would have decisions to make. About the house, about the documents, about whether to find Anna and Rosa, about whether to forgive a dead man who had carried more weight than any one person should bear. But tonight, in this hidden room his father had built to protect secrets, and the people those secrets could hurt, James Mitchell sat among the ruins of everything he thought he knew about his family, about his father, about himself. And for the first time in 34 years, he felt close to the old man. Close enough to understand. Close enough to grieve. Close enough, maybe, to forgive. The photograph of Bobby and Rosa and baby Anna lay beside him. 3 people frozen in a moment of happiness before the world tore them apart. James picked it up, held it to the light. His father's smile, genuine and unguarded, looked back at him across 41 years. I understand now, James whispered to the empty room, to the ghost of the man who had built these walls. I understand why you could not tell me, why you chose silence over truth, why you let me hate you rather than risk hurting the people you were trying to protect. The house offered no answer, only the sound of snow against the windows, steady and relentless as time. James reached for another box, another layer of his father's hidden life. The night was long, and there was so much left to discover. So many voices waiting to be heard. So many pieces of a puzzle that, once assembled, would change everything. And somewhere in the darkness, the ghost of Bobby Mitchell watched his son begin to understand the price of love, the cost of duty, the weight that good men carry so others do not have to. Morning came cold and gray, the kind of Maine winter morning that made you question whether the sun still existed somewhere beyond the clouds. James had not slept. He had spent the entire night in the attic, moving through his father's hidden archive like an archaeologist, excavating layers of a life he had never known existed. His back ached from sitting on the hard floor. His eyes burned from reading by the weak light of the single bulb. But his mind was sharp, electric, buzzing with revelation after revelation. The documents told a story that unfolded in fragments, pieces of a puzzle that Bobby Mitchell had never meant for anyone to assemble, at least not while he was alive to answer for it. Operation Safe Haven. The name appeared again and again in letters, in meeting notes, in handwritten logs. James had found a ledger, the kind accountants used before computers, filled with names and dates. Central American names mostly, some Guatemalan, some Honduran, some Nicaraguan. Each entry marked with an arrival date and a destination: Portland, Oregon; San Francisco, California; Houston, Texas. Cities where people could disappear into communities that would not ask too many questions about paperwork. Between 1990 and 1998, 217 people had passed through this network. 217 lives saved, hidden, relocated. And Bobby Mitchell's house, this house, had been one of the primary safe houses in the Northeast. People had slept in the basement, in the attic, in the very room where James had grown up. While he had been playing baseball and dreaming of escape, his father had been harboring refugees in the darkness. The scope of it staggered him. The risk. If Bobby had been caught, he would have faced federal charges: conspiracy to violate immigration law, harboring illegal aliens, falsifying documents. 20 years in prison, maybe more. Everything would have been destroyed. The house, the family name, James's future. Everything. And yet Bobby had done it anyway. James found a folder marked 1992, the year Anna and Rosa had arrived. Inside, photographs. Rosa stepping off a bus in Boston, looking terrified and exhausted. A small girl clutching her hand. Anna was 9 in these photos, all dark eyes and serious expression, staring at the camera with the wariness of a child who had learned too young that the world was not safe. Bobby waiting at the station, older and grayer than in the El Salvador photos, but with the same expression of desperate hope. The reunion captured in a series of blurry Polaroids. Rosa crying, Bobby crying, Anna standing apart, uncertain. A child who did not know this American man who claimed to be her father. There were letters, too, from Anna to Bobby, written in the years after she had gone to college. The handwriting was careful, precise, the English imperfect but improving with each letter. Dear Father Bobby, that was how she addressed him. Not Dad, not Father. Father Bobby as if he were a priest or a stranger. Thank you for the money for books. School is hard, but I study much. Professor says my English improves. I think of you and Mother Rosa. I hope you are well. Formal, distant. The letters of a child who had been told this man was her father, but who had spent the first 9 years of her life without him. James set the letters down, his throat tight. He understood that distance, had lived it himself. Father and son, father and daughter, both kept at arm's length by a man who loved deeply but could not find the words to say it. The sound of a car door slamming brought James back to the present. He climbed down from the attic, his joints protesting, and looked out the front window. A silver sedan sat in the driveway, and a man in his late 40s was walking toward the porch, carrying a leather messenger bag. James opened the door before the man could knock. James Mitchell? That's right. The man extended his hand. David Park. I am a journalist, investigative reporter. I have been researching Operation Safe Haven for the past 3 years. I heard your father passed away. I am very sorry for your loss. James did not take the offered hand. What do you want? David lowered his hand, unfazed. I want to tell the story, the real story, about what these men did, about the risks they took to save people the government had abandoned. Your father was a hero, Mr. Mitchell. The American public should know that. My father is dead. Let him rest. David shifted his weight, choosing his words carefully. I understand your desire for privacy, but there is more to this story than just honoring veterans. There are forces that do not want this history exposed, people with power who benefited from keeping Operation Safe Haven quiet, and those people are still out there, still covering their tracks. James studied the man. Korean-American, well-dressed, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The messenger bag looked expensive, well-used, the kind of bag someone carried when they took their work seriously. What do you know about my father? David glanced past James into the house. Can we talk inside? I have documents you should see. James considered refusing, sending this man away. But curiosity won out, the same curiosity that had kept him up all night reading his father's secrets. He stepped aside, and David entered. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where James had eaten breakfast as a child, where Bobby had sat doing crossword puzzles in his final years. David opened his messenger bag and pulled out a folder thick with papers. Your father was not just a participant in Operation Safe Haven. He was one of the founders. Along with Frank Delgado and 4 other veterans, they started the network in 1990. Their goal was simple: get families fleeing the civil wars in Central America into the United States. The official channels were too slow, too bureaucratic. People were dying while they waited for paperwork. So these men decided to create an unofficial channel. I know all this already. David looked up, surprised. You have been through the attic. James said nothing, which was answer enough. Then you know about the safe houses, the forged documents, the routes they used. But do you know about the funding? What funding? David pulled out a financial ledger, photocopied pages covered in numbers. Operation Safe Haven cost money. Plane tickets, bus tickets, housing food, bribes for border guards and corrupt officials. Where do you think that money came from? Donations? Some. Veterans groups, churches, private donors, but not enough. Not nearly enough for an operation of this scale. So they found another source. David laid out a series of bank statements, account numbers redacted, wire transfers, tens of thousands of dollars at a time, coming from accounts registered to shell corporations with names like Pacific Consulting Group and Eastern Trade Associates. These are CIA fronts, David said quietly. The agency was funding Operation Safe Haven. James felt the room tilt slightly. Why would the CIA fund an illegal immigration network? David leaned back, his expression grim. That is the question I have been trying to answer for 3 years. At first, I thought it was humanitarian. The agency has done stranger things. But the timing is wrong. These payments started in 1992, 2 years after Operation Safe Haven began. And they stopped abruptly in 1998, the same year the network shut down. Something changed in 1998, something that made the CIA close the tap and bury all records of their involvement. What do you think happened? David pulled out more documents, these ones marked with official seals and classifications. I filed Freedom of Information requests. Most came back heavily redacted or denied for national security reasons. But I found enough to piece together a theory. Operation Safe Haven was not just about saving refugees. It was a cover for something else. The CIA was using the network to bring assets into the country. Informants, translators, people who had worked for American intelligence in Central America, people who needed to disappear. James thought of the ledger upstairs. The 217 names. How many of them had been refugees, and how many had been spies? Your father and the other veterans, David continued. They thought they were running a humanitarian operation. And they were. But the CIA was running something else on top of it, using the same infrastructure, the same routes. The veterans were, forgive me for saying this, useful idiots. Patriotic men who would never question why they suddenly had funding for their mission. Bobby would have known. He was not stupid. Maybe he knew. Maybe he suspected and chose to ignore it because the funding let him save more people. Maybe he found out later and it destroyed him. I do not know. That is why I need to talk to the other members of the network, to find out what they knew and when they knew it. Frank Delgado lives 3 houses down. Go talk to him. David shook his head. I tried. He will not speak to me. Neither will any of the others still alive. They are protecting something. Or someone. James stood, walked to the window. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, light flakes that drifted down like ash. He thought of Bobby in his final years, sitting at this table, carrying the weight of secrets that could destroy reputations, end careers, hurt innocent people who had just wanted a new life. What do you want from me? David joined him at the window. Your father kept records, detailed records. If they still exist, they could prove what really happened. They could expose the people who use these veterans, who turn their goodwill into a covert operation. Do you not think those men deserve the truth? And what about the people who were saved, the families who are living quiet lives now? What happens to them when their names end up in your article? When Immigration and Customs Enforcement starts asking questions about how they got here 30 years ago? David was silent for a long moment. That is a fair question, and I do not have a perfect answer. Justice is not clean. Truth has casualties. But the alternative is letting powerful people get away with exploiting good men like your father. Is that better? James did not answer because he did not know. The simple certainties of his youth had long since crumbled. Iraq had taught him that good intentions paved roads to hell, that the men giving orders were not always the men who paid the price, that truth and justice were not the same thing. I need time to think. David nodded, pulled a business card from his wallet. My number. Call me when you are ready to talk. But, Mr. Mitchell, one more thing. Be careful. 3 weeks ago, someone broke into my apartment in Boston. They took my laptop, my backup drives, every piece of physical evidence I had gathered. They were professionals. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Someone does not want this story told. He left, the door closing with a soft click. James stood at the window, watching the silver sedan pull away, leaving tracks in the fresh snow. The house felt different now. Not just a place of memory, but a place under siege. Its secrets worth stealing, worth protecting, worth killing for, perhaps. James had faced danger before, had walked through Fallujah expecting every doorway to hide a bullet with his name on it. But this was different. This was not enemy combatants in a foreign desert. This was shadows in his own country, threats he could not see or anticipate. His phone rang, the sound jarring in the quiet house. Unknown number. He answered anyway. Mr. Mitchell? A woman's voice, professional, cool. My name is Anna Morrison. I believe you know who I am. James's heart slammed against his ribs. His sister, half-sister, the baby in those photographs. Now a woman with a voice that carried traces of two worlds, Spanish and English blended into something entirely her own. I know who you are. Our father wanted us to meet. I have wanted to meet you for many years, but I understood it had to be your choice. Now that Bobby has passed, I think maybe it is time, if you are willing. James closed his eyes. Willing. Was he willing to meet the daughter Bobby had searched for, had saved, had loved in ways he had never quite managed to love James? Was he willing to face the living proof of his father's other life? Where are you? Seattle. But I can fly to Boston tomorrow. We could meet somewhere neutral, a coffee shop, a restaurant, wherever you are comfortable. I am at the house, Maple Lane. You can come here if you want. Silence on the other end, stretching out. Then, are you sure? That house, it holds many memories for me, not all of them easy. I am sure. Tomorrow, then? I will catch the red eye tonight. I can be there by noon. Anna. Yes? James struggled for words, settled on the simplest truth he could offer. I'm glad you are alive. I'm glad he found you. Her voice softened, and for a moment he heard Bobby in it, that same gruff tenderness his father had shown in rare, unguarded moments. I am glad too. I will see you tomorrow, James. The line went dead. James set the phone down and stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the ordinary artifacts of his father's life. Coffee cups in the sink, a dish towel draped over the oven handle. The calendar on the wall still turned to October, the month Bobby died. Everything frozen in the moment of his departure, waiting for someone to restart time. James spent the rest of the day cleaning. It was displacement activity, he knew, a way to keep his hands busy while his mind processed. But it also felt necessary. If Anna was coming, the house should not look like a mausoleum. He washed dishes, swept floors, cleared away the dust that had accumulated in Bobby's absence. He found himself talking as he worked, speaking to the empty rooms as if his father might be listening. You should have told me. I would have understood. Maybe not at 18, but later. You could have called when I got back from Iraq. Could have written a letter. I would not have hated you for having another daughter. I would have understood that love does not divide. It multiplies. But even as he said it, James was not sure it was true. At 18, 19, 20, he had been angry at the world, at his father for not being proud of his military service, at himself for choosing a path that led to killing, and trauma, and sleepless nights. If Bobby had told him then about Rosa and Anna, James might have seen it as betrayal, might have used it as one more reason to stay away, to nurse his grievance. Maybe Bobby had known that. Maybe that was why he had stayed silent. That night, James returned to the attic. He had more questions now, questions that David Park's visit had raised. He found a file labeled 998, the year everything had ended. Inside, a series of letters, official letters, on government letterhead: FBI, Department of Justice, Immigration and Naturalization Service, all dated between March and June of 1998, all saying essentially the same thing. We are conducting an investigation into alleged immigration violations. You are required to preserve all documents and records. Failure to comply may result in obstruction charges. And then, dated July 1st, 1998, a different kind of letter. Plain white paper, no letterhead, typed on what looked like an old typewriter, the letters slightly uneven. Mr. Mitchell, you and your associates have done admirable work helping those in need. However, your activities have come to the attention of parties who do not appreciate the complications you have created. We are prepared to offer a one-time arrangement. Accept financial compensation for your services rendered, cease all operations immediately, and destroy all records of participants and methods. In exchange, no charges will be filed, and the families you have helped will not be investigated or deported. Refuse, and we cannot guarantee anyone's safety. You have 7 days to decide. Instructions for response will follow. No signature, no contact information, just a threat wrapped in bureaucratic language. James found Bobby's response paper clipped to the letter, a single sentence in his father's handwriting. I will not destroy the records. The people deserve to be remembered. But something had changed Bobby's mind, because 2 weeks later, there was a bank statement showing a deposit of $500,000 into an account in Bobby's name. And after that, no more entries in the Operation Safe Haven ledgers, no more names, no more arrivals. The network had shut down, and its participants had scattered into silence. What happened in those 2 weeks? What had convinced Bobby to take the money and bury the truth? James searched through more files and found the answer in a newspaper clipping from July 15, 1998. A small article buried on page 6 of the Portland Press-Herald. Local man critically injured in assault. Frank Delgado, 43, was attacked outside his home Tuesday night by unknown assailants. Delgado was beaten severely and remains in critical condition at Maine Medical Center. Police say the attack may be related to a robbery, though nothing was taken. Anyone with information is asked to contact Portland police. Frank had nearly died. Bobby's friend, his brother-in-arms, the man who had started Operation Safe Haven with him, had been beaten to within an inch of his life as a message. Keep quiet, or next time it will be worse. So Bobby had kept quiet, had taken the money, had destroyed most of the operational documents, but kept the important ones. The records of the people who had been saved, hidden in this attic where they could serve as insurance, as leverage, as a final testament to what had been accomplished. James sat back, the pieces falling into place. His father had not been a coward. He had made a calculated choice: protect the living, even if it meant letting the guilty go free. Accept the money not as payment, but as restitution, a small price for the government to pay for using honorable men as tools in their shadow games. It was a compromise Bobby Mitchell had hated. James could see that in the journal entries from the years after 1998. His father had slid into depression, had pulled away from everyone, had carried the guilt of silence like a stone around his neck. And then Rosa had come back into his life after James's mother died. And for a few years, there had been something like peace, an old love rekindled, two people who had survived impossible odds finding comfort in each other's company. James closed the journal and descended from the attic. Tomorrow Anna would arrive, and he would have to decide what to tell her, how much to share. But tonight, he needed air. He walked out into the snow. No coat, just his flannel shirt and jeans. The cold bit at him, sharp and cleansing. He walked down Maple Lane, past the dark houses where neighbors slept, past Frank Delgado's place where a light still burned in an upstairs window. He found himself at the cemetery without consciously choosing the destination. Willowbrook Cemetery, where 3 generations of Mitchells lay under New England granite. He walked through the gates, his boots crunching in the snow, and found his father's grave by instinct more than sight. The headstone was simple: Robert James Mitchell, USMC, 1945 to 2023. Beloved father. Below that, a space left blank, presumably for Rosa when her time came. James stood looking down at the grave, at the mound of earth that had settled over 3 months, now covered in white. I met a journalist today. He wants to tell your story. He thinks you were used by the CIA, that you were a hero who deserves recognition. And maybe you were. Maybe you do. But I think you would hate that. You did not do it for recognition. You did it because you thought it was right, and then you stayed silent because you thought that was right too. He crouched down, brushed snow from the headstone. I am going to meet Anna tomorrow, your daughter, my sister. I do not know what I am going to say to her. I do not know what she expects from me, but I am going to try, for you, for her, for the family we never got to be. The wind picked up, swirling snow around him. James stood, his knees protesting, and looked up at the sky. Clouds covered the stars. But he knew they were up there somewhere, constant and distant and indifferent to human struggle. I forgive you, he said to the grave, to the ghost, to the father who could not hear him. I forgive you for the secrets, for the distance, for loving someone else when I thought you could barely love me. I understand now. You did not know how to hold both of us, so you held the one who needed you most, and you let me go because you thought I was strong enough to survive without you. Tears came then, hot against the cold of his face. He let them fall, let 34 years of anger and hurt and misunderstanding drain out into the snow. You were right. I survived. But I wish I had not had to. I wish we had figured out how to talk to each other. I wish I had been there when you died. I wish for a lot of things that can never be now. He turned and walked back toward the road, leaving his father's grave to the silence and the snow. Tomorrow would bring Anna, would bring decisions about David Park and the documents and what truth was worth protecting and what truth deserved to be told. But tonight was for grief, for the kind of crying a man does alone, under a dark sky, for a father he had lost twice, once to silence and once to death. At the edge of the cemetery, James stopped and looked back one final time. The headstone was barely visible now, already disappearing under fresh snowfall. By morning, it would be covered completely, white and clean and anonymous. But the name would still be there, carved deep enough to last 100 years. Robert James Mitchell, USMC, a man who had carried the weight so others would not have to. A Marine who understood that the hardest battles were not fought with rifles, but with conscience, with the terrible choice between justice and mercy. James walked home through streets he had once known like the back of his hand, streets that felt both familiar and foreign now. The house on Maple Lane waited, lit from within, warm against the cold. Inside, in the hidden room in the attic, 217 names waited to be remembered or forgotten, to be honored or protected. Tomorrow he would have to choose. Tonight he was simply a son, grieving the father he had finally, too late, begun to understand. The rental car pulled into the driveway at exactly noon, a white sedan with Massachusetts plates. James watched from the living room window, his coffee gone cold in his hand. He had been standing there for the past 20 minutes, waiting, his stomach tight with an emotion he could not quite name. Not fear exactly, not anxiety. Something closer to the feeling he had experienced before going on patrol in Fallujah, that heightened awareness that life was about to change in ways he could not predict or control. The driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. She was smaller than James had expected, maybe 5'4", dressed in practical winter clothes, a dark coat and boots. Her hair was black, cut short, professional. She stood for a moment looking at the house, and even from this distance, James could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself like someone preparing for battle. Anna Morrison, 41 years old, trauma surgeon, his half-sister. A woman who shared his father's blood but had lived a life so different from his own that they might as well have grown up on different planets. He opened the door before she reached the porch. They stood facing each other across the threshold, two strangers bound by genetics and a dead man's secrets. She studied him with dark eyes that missed nothing, a doctor's eyes trained to assess and diagnose. Her face was harder to read. She had Bobby's bone structure, that same sharp jaw and high cheekbones, but her expression carried a guardedness that came from years of being neither fully Salvadoran nor fully American, of existing in the space between worlds. James Mitchell, Anna Morrison, neither moved to shake hands or embrace. The moment was too delicate for easy gestures. "May I come in, hon?" James stepped aside. She entered, bringing with her the scent of cold air and something floral, perfume, or shampoo. She looked around the living room, her gaze moving across the furniture, the photographs, the accumulated artifacts of Bobby's life. "It looks the same, almost exactly as I remember it. When were you here last?" 2010, the year your mother died. Bobby asked me to stay away after that. He said it would not be right, having me in the house so soon after she passed. I understood. I did not want to cause him more pain. She walked to the mantel, picked up the photograph of James in his dress blues. She studied it for a long moment. "He kept this here, front and center. He told me once that looking at it every day was both his greatest pride and his deepest regret." James felt something twist in his chest. Did he talk about me? Anna set the photograph down carefully, precisely where it had been. All the time. How you made sergeant. How you earned a commendation for bravery in Fallujah. How you got married, had a son. He knew everything about your life, James. He just did not know how to be part of it. She turned to face him, and her expression softened slightly. "He loved you. I need you to know that. Everything he did, every choice he made, was because he loved both of us and did not know how to reconcile that love. He thought if he told you about me, you would see him as unfaithful to your mother. If he brought me into your life, you would resent me for existing. So he kept us separate, gave us both what he could, and carried the guilt of that separation until it killed him." The words landed like stones. James had spent 34 years believing his father did not care enough to reach out. Now he understood Bobby had cared too much, had loved so deeply that it paralyzed him. "Come upstairs. There is something you need to see." He led her to the attic, up the folding ladder, into the hidden room. Anna stood in the doorway, her hand over her mouth, staring at the shelves filled with documents and photographs and the careful record of 217 lives saved. "Oh, Bobby," she whispered, "you kept it all. You knew about Operation Safe Haven?" "Of course, I was part of it. My mother and I were numbers 47 and 48 on that list. But I thought Bobby had destroyed everything in 1998. That was the deal he made. That was why he took the money." James pulled down one of the journals, the one from July 1998. He showed her Bobby's handwritten note. "I will not destroy the records. The people deserve to be remembered." Anna read it, then sank onto the floor, her back against the filing cabinet. Stubborn man. Even when threatened, even when Frank nearly died, he could not bring himself to erase the proof that we existed, that we mattered. "Frank told me he got beaten, sent to the hospital." Anna nodded. "I was in medical school at the time. Bobby called me, asked if I could check on Frank, make sure the doctors were taking care of him properly. That was the first time Bobby ever asked me for anything. The first time he treated me like family instead of someone he was obligated to help." "What happened after that?" Anna pulled her knees to her chest, suddenly looking younger, more vulnerable. "Bobby shut everything down. Stopped taking calls from people who needed help. Turned away families who showed up at the door. He became, I think the word is haunted. He would sit for hours, not speaking. My mother rose as she tried to reach him, but he was drowning in guilt. Guilt about the network closing, guilt about taking blood money to keep quiet, guilt about Frank, about you, about everything." James sat beside her on the floor, two middle-aged people in a dusty attic, surrounded by their father's ghosts. "Did my mother know about you and Rosa?" Anna was quiet for a long time. "Yes. Bobby told her in 1992 when we arrived. He said he could not keep lying to her, could not bring another woman and child into his life without her knowledge. Your mother, she had every right to be angry, to leave him, but she did not. She said Bobby had made a mistake during the war, but he had spent 7 years trying to make it right, and that meant something. She accepted us. Not warmly, but she accepted us." James thought of his mother in her final years, thin and tired from chemotherapy, still making dinner, still keeping the house, still standing by a man who had betrayed her. He had always seen her as weak, too willing to accept Bobby's silences. Now he understood her strength. I wish I had known, I wish he had told me. Would you have understood? At 18? At 20? James considered honestly. No, probably not. Anna smiled sadly. Bobby knew that. He knew you needed time to become the man who could understand. He was waiting for that moment. But then you stopped calling, stopped visiting, and he thought he had lost his chance. They sat in silence, the weight of missed opportunities settling around them like dust. Finally, Anna spoke again. There's something else you should know about our mother, Rosa. She is not just in a care facility. She is dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors give her maybe 6 months. I came here not just to meet you, but to ask if you would come see her. She wants to meet Bobby's son before she goes. The request hung in the air. James thought about the photograph he had found. Young Rosa holding baby Anna. Bobby's arm around them both. All three of them frozen in a moment of happiness before the world tore them apart. I will come. Anna's eyes glistened. Thank you. A sound from downstairs broke the moment. The front door opening. Footsteps, heavy and confident. James and Anna exchanged glances. James moved to the attic entrance, looked down. Frank Delgado stood in the living room. And he was not alone. 2 other men flanked him, both in their late 60s, both with the bearing of former military. And their expressions were not friendly. James Mitchell, you need to come down here, now. James descended the ladder, Anna following. The 3 men watched them emerge, their faces grave. Frank, what is this? These are my friends from the old days. Tom Brennan, left. Carlos Martinez, right. We served together in Central America. We ran Operation Safe Haven together. And we need to talk about what you are planning to do with those documents up there. James crossed his arms. I've not decided anything. Tom Brennan stepped forward. He was tall, rangy, with iron gray hair and eyes like flint. That reporter, David Park, came to see you. We know because he came to see all of us first, asking questions, digging into things that should stay buried. Now he is asking about you, about what Bobby might have left behind. We need to know if you talked to him. I talked to him. I did not tell him anything. But you are thinking about it, Carlos said. His voice carried the trace of an accent, Spanish vowels softening the edges. You are thinking that maybe the truth should come out, that people should know what we did. Anna moved to stand beside James. These men risked everything to save people like me and my mother. You do not get to interrogate him in his own house. Frank held up a hand. Nobody is interrogating anyone. We are here because we are worried. Worried about what happens if those records become public. Worried about the families we saved. Worried about ourselves. You took money to stay quiet, James said. $500,000. Blood money from people who used you. Tom's jaw tightened. We took money to protect the families we saved. You think immigration does not have long memories? You think there is a statute of limitations on deportation? Those 200 people, most of them became citizens legally after they got here. But their entry was illegal. If that comes out, their citizenship can be revoked. Their children's citizenship can be questioned. Decades of American lives can be destroyed with the stroke of a pen. James felt his certainty waver. He had not thought about that, had not considered that the truth could be a weapon aimed at innocent people. Carlos moved closer, his voice dropping. I have grandchildren, Mr. Mitchell. American grandchildren who do not know their grandfather came here on forged papers. If my story becomes public, ICE will come for me. They will investigate my whole family. My daughter, who was 6 when we arrived, who has lived here for 35 years, who teaches elementary school in Texas. They will question her citizenship. They will make her prove she belongs here. You understand what that will do to her? Anna's voice was quiet but firm. My children are 4th generation on their father's side, 1st generation on mine. They know I was born in El Salvador, but they do not know how I got here. They think I came through official channels after the Civil War. If the truth comes out, they will have to explain their mother to friends, to employers, to everyone who suddenly sees them as questionable Americans. James looked at each of them in turn. Good people. People who had done nothing wrong except survive. People who deserved peace in their final years, not investigations and interrogations, and the constant threat of having their lives dismantled. What about justice? What about the people who used you? The CIA operatives who turned your humanitarian work into a spy network, they just get away with it? Tom laughed bitterly. They already got away with it 26 years ago, the moment we took that money and signed those non-disclosure agreements. The moment we agreed to let history be written without us in it. Frank sat in Bobby's chair, the leather creaking. Your father and I talked about this before he died. He knew you would find the documents, knew you would have to make this choice. He told me, Frank, if my son decides to burn it all down, to expose everything, I will not blame him. Truth matters. But he also said he hoped you would understand that some truths protect the guilty while destroying the innocent, that sometimes the most moral choice is silence. James felt the walls closing in. Every instinct he had, every value the Marines had drilled into him, screamed that the truth should be told, that corruption should be exposed, that good men should not have to hide their good deeds. But the cost was too high. He looked at Anna, at the woman who had become a surgeon, who saved lives every day, who had children who should never have to question whether they belonged in the only country they had ever known. I need time to think. Tom shook his head. Time is what we do not have. David Park is not going to wait forever. He is building his story with or without your cooperation. If he publishes with incomplete information, it could be worse than if we controlled the narrative. What do you want me to do? Burn it, Carlos said simply. All of it. The documents, the photographs, the journals, everything in that attic. Turn it to ash and scatter it. Let Operation Safe Haven be a story that died with the men who ran it. No. Everyone turned to look at Anna. She stood with her arms crossed, her doctor's composure cracking to reveal the steel underneath. You do not get to erase us. Those records are not just about your operation. They are about our lives. My mother's name is in those files. Her story, the story of how she survived the death squads, how she got her daughter out, how she built a life from nothing. You want to burn that? Make it like we never existed? Nobody wants to erase you, Frank said gently. We want to protect you. You want to protect yourselves, your reputations, your peace of mind. But we are the ones who lived in the shadows. We are the ones who could never tell our full stories. And now you want to take even the record of those stories away. James watched his sister face down 3 old warriors, and he saw Bobby in her. That same stubborn refusal to accept easy answers. That same bone-deep need to do what was right even when it was hard. The room fell into tense silence. Finally, James spoke. Nobody is burning anything. Not yet. Give me 48 hours to figure out what to do. 48 hours and then we talk again. Tom and Carlos exchanged glances. Frank studied James for a long moment, then nodded. 48 hours. But Mitchell, understand something. We spent decades building new lives after Central America. We are not going to let them be destroyed now. If you move to expose this, there will be consequences. Is that a threat? It is a fact. We protected those families with everything we had. We will keep protecting them. The 3 men left, their footsteps heavy on the porch, the door closing with finality. James and Anna stood in the living room, the echoes of the confrontation still vibrating in the air. Anna sank onto the couch. I am sorry, I should not have spoken for you. You were right. Those records are not mine to destroy. But they are not mine to protect either. This is your inheritance, James, your father's legacy. Whatever you decide, I will support it. James looked out the window at the white landscape, at the town that had shaped his father, at the secrets that seemed to seep from the very ground. Tell me about Rosa, your mother. Tell me what she was like. Anna smiled, the first genuine smile James had seen from her. Strong, impossibly strong. She survived things that should have broken her. A civil war, the death squads coming for her family, 7 years of separation from the man she loved, and through all of it, she kept her humanity, kept her ability to hope. Did she love Bobby? Until the day he died. And he loved her. When they reunited in 2010, after your mother passed, it was like watching 2 people who had been holding their breath for 25 years finally exhale. They were not young anymore. They were not the same people who had fallen in love in San Salvador. But they still fit together. James felt a pang of something he had not expected. Not jealousy exactly. More like grief for all the years Bobby and Rosa had lost, for all the happiness that had been stolen by circumstance and duty, and the cruel machinery of war. I want to meet her before she dies. I want to hear her story from her own mouth. Anna pulled out her phone. I can arrange a flight to San Jose tomorrow. She is at a hospice facility there. She has good days and bad days. Tomorrow might be good. Tomorrow, then. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the attic, Anna going through the boxes, pulling out photographs and documents, telling James the stories behind them. This man, Miguel Ramirez, he owned a restaurant in Seattle now. His grandchildren were doctors and lawyers. This woman, Elena Cruz, she was a poet, published 3 books about the refugee experience. This family, the Herreras, 5 children, all born in Central America. All American citizens now, all successful. Each name was a life, each photograph a testament to survival. And James began to understand what his father had protected, not just records, futures. As evening fell, Anna's phone rang. She answered, her expression shifting from neutral to concerned in the space of a heartbeat. When? Is she stable? I can be there in 6 hours if I fly tonight. She hung up, her hand shaking slightly. Rosa. She took a turn for the worse this afternoon. The doctors do not think she has much time. Go. I will drive you to the airport. Come with me, please. I know it is sudden, but she wants to meet you, and if we wait. She did not need to finish. James understood. Death did not wait for convenient timing. Let me pack a bag. 20 minutes later, they were in James's rental truck, driving toward Portland International. Snow had started falling again, the kind that made driving treacherous, but James kept his hands steady on the wheel. Anna sat beside him, making calls, arranging flights, her doctor's efficiency taking over. They caught the last direct flight to San Jose, landing near midnight. A taxi took them through empty streets to the hospice facility, a low building tucked between old oak trees. The night nurse recognized Anna immediately. Dr. Morrison, your mother has been asking for you. She is awake but weak. You should go in. Both of us, Anna said. This is James Mitchell, Bobby's son. The nurse's expression softened. She knows. She has been waiting. The room was dim, lit only by a small lamp beside the bed. Medical equipment beeped softly, tracking heartbeat and oxygen levels. And in the bed, impossibly small, lay Rosa. She was 82 but looked ancient, worn down by disease and time. Her hair was white, her skin like rice paper stretched over delicate bones. But when her eyes opened and found Anna, they held a clarity that defied her physical frailty. Mija, my daughter. Anna moved to the bedside, took her mother's hand. Mama, I am here. Rosa's gaze shifted to James, and he felt the full weight of it. This woman who had loved his father, who had survived hell to build a life in a country that had once armed the forces that destroyed hers. Bobby's son? She spoke in heavily accented English, each word an effort. You have his eyes, his face. I see him in you. James stepped closer, unsure what to say. How to address this woman who was not his mother, but who had mothered his father's child. I am sorry we never met before. I am sorry for everything you went through. Rosa's thin hand lifted slightly, a gesture of dismissal. No sorry, life is life, war is war. I loved Bobby. He loved me. We got some years together at the end, more than many people get. Anna wiped tears from her cheeks. Mama, you need to rest. Save your strength. Rest for what? Rosa smiled, the expression transforming her face, letting James see the young woman Bobby had fallen in love with. I am dying, mija. I know this. Doctors know this. Only thing left is to say what needs saying before words stop coming. She gestured for James to come closer. He did, pulling a chair up beside the bed. Your father, good man. Broken man, but good. He carry guilt like other men carry wallet. Every day heavy. Guilt about me. About you. About men he saw die in El Salvador. About people he could not save. I tell him, Bobby, put down guilt. It too heavy. But he could not. He American man. American men think they have to carry everything alone. Her breathing became labored. Anna adjusted the oxygen, but Rosa waved her away impatiently. I want to tell you something Bobby never could. He was proud of you. When you became Marine, he cried. Not because he disappointed, because he scared. He knew what war does, what it takes. He saw it in me. in himself. He did not want it for you. But you came back. You survived. That made him more proud. His son, strong enough to go to war and come back still human. James felt his throat close. I thought he was ashamed of me. Never ashamed. Only afraid of losing you like he lost everything else he loved. Rosa's eyes began to close. Anna leaned forward, alarmed, but Rosa squeezed her daughter's hand. One more thing. The papers, Bobby's papers in the house. Do not destroy them, but do not give them to people who make trouble. Give them to people who will protect the families, who will remember us the right way. How will I know who those people are? James asked. You will know, Bobby knew. He trusted you to know. Her breathing slowed, deepened. Anna checked the monitors, her professional mask slipping back into place. She is sleeping. We should let her rest. They sat in the waiting room, drinking bad coffee from a machine, watching the clock move toward dawn. At 4:17 a.m., the nurse came to find them. She went peacefully. No pain. I am very sorry for your loss. Anna nodded, stood, walked mechanically toward her mother's room. James followed, unsure of his place in this grief. But when they entered the room, when Anna's composure finally cracked and she began to sob, he moved to her side and held her while she cried. This woman he barely knew, his sister, his family. They stayed in San Jose for 3 days, arranging Rosa's funeral, dealing with paperwork, sorting through a small apartment that held the accumulated memories of a life lived in exile. James met Rosa's friends, other Central American women who had survived the wars and built community in this adopted land. They welcomed him warmly, told him stories about Bobby visiting, about how he and Rosa would sit for hours barely talking, just being together in the comfortable silence of two people who had earned each other. On the 4th day, as they prepared to fly back to Maine, Anna handed James a small box. Rosa wanted you to have this. Inside was a photograph James had never seen. Bobby in civilian clothes, young, maybe 24, standing with Rosa in what looked like a street market in San Salvador. They were laughing at something off camera, Bobby's arm around Rosa's waist, her head on his shoulder. Pure joy captured in silver and celluloid. He loved her, James said, really loved her. Yes, and he loved your mother too. He loved you both. Love does not divide, James. It multiplies. Bobby had enough love for all of us. He just did not know how to show it. The flight back to Maine was quiet, both of them exhausted by grief and travel. When they landed in Portland, David Park was waiting at the arrivals gate. He approached carefully, reading the tension in their faces. I heard about Rosa. I am truly sorry. How did you hear? Anna asked sharply. I have been monitoring obituaries. It is part of my job. He paused. I also heard you two went to California together. That must mean you have decided to talk to me. James shook his head. We have not decided anything. David pulled an envelope from his jacket. Then maybe this will help you decide. Inside are documents I obtained through a source who worked at the CIA in the 90s. They prove Operation Safe Haven was used as a cover for intelligence operations. They also prove who gave the orders, who made money from it, and who is still alive to answer for it. James took the envelope but did not open it. What do you want, Mr. Park? The truth and justice. These men who used your father, they are still out there. One of them is a very powerful man. His name is Richard Coleman. He was a CIA field officer in the 80s and 90s. He used humanitarian organizations as fronts for intelligence gathering. He made millions from classified contracts. And he has been covering his tracks ever since, making sure no one can connect him to the less savory parts of his career. Coleman, James repeated. Why do I know that name? David smiled grimly. Because Staff Sergeant Thomas Coleman recruited you into the Marines in 1990. It is the same man. He started military, moved to intelligence, then to private contracting. He is now 71 years old, living in Boston, worth about $40 million. And he does not want anyone digging into how he made that money. The pieces clicked into place. The recruiter who had looked at 18-year-old James and asked if he was running from something. The man who had promised adventure, honor, purpose. That same man had been part of the apparatus that used Bobby, that turned Operation Safe Haven into a spy network. James looked at Anna. She met his gaze, and he saw Bobby in her eyes. That stubborn determination to do what was right. "We need to talk to Frank and the others," James said. "All of them. And then we decide together what happens to my father's legacy." The meeting took place in Frank Delgado's basement, a finished room that smelled of old carpet and coffee, where framed photographs of Marines in dress blues lined the walls like sentinels. 7 people gathered around a folding table that had seen better days. Frank, Tom Brennan, Carlos Martinez, 2 other veterans James had not met before, Anna and James himself. David Park sat in the corner with his laptop, taking notes, his presence tolerated but not welcomed. Frank spread the documents across the table. CIA memos, financial records, operational reports, all stamped with classifications that should have kept them buried for decades. David's source had been thorough. "Richard Coleman," Frank said, his voice flat and hard. "I remember him. Young officer, ambitious, always talking about how the agency needed to be more creative in its operations. He came to me in 1992, said he could get us funding for Operation Safe Haven. Real money, enough to save hundreds of families. All we had to do was ask no questions about where it came from." "And you believed him?" Tom's voice carried accusation. "We wanted to believe him. We had families waiting, people who would die if we did not get them out. So yes, we took his money. We did not ask questions we should have asked." One of the other veterans, a thin man named Walter Price, leaned forward. "Coleman used us. Every person we brought over, he vetted them first. Said it was for security, making sure we were not bringing in criminals or cartel members. But he was recruiting them. The ones with intelligence value, the ones who had worked for Salvadoran government or had information about guerrilla networks. He turned them into assets." "How many?" James asked. Walter shrugged. "Hard to say. Maybe 20, 25 out of the 200. But those 20 people gave the CIA eyes and ears in Central American communities across the United States, monitoring, reporting, feeding information back to Langley. And none of them knew they were doing it. They thought they were just answering friendly questions from the nice American who helped them get settled." "That is not the worst part," Carlos added. He pulled out a financial statement, numbers highlighted in yellow. Coleman was billing the agency for these operations. $20,000 per asset recruited. $50,000 for high-value targets. Over 6 years, he made close to $3 million just from our network. And that was only one of his operations. He ran the same scheme with refugee programs from Nicaragua, from Guatemala, from anywhere the CIA wanted penetration. James studied the documents, his anger building like pressure in a sealed container. This man had recruited him into the Marines, had looked him in the eye and talked about honor and service. And all the while he had been profiting from the exploitation of desperate people. "Where is he now?" David spoke from his corner. "Boston, Beacon Hill. He lives in a brownstone worth about $8 million, serves on the board of several defense contractors, gives money to veterans' charities, positions himself as a patriot and a humanitarian. He is careful, protected, connected to people in government who owe him favors." "So we expose him," Anna said. "We take these documents to the press, to Congress, to anyone who will listen." Frank shook his head. "It is not that simple. Coleman has lawyers, resources, connections. The moment we go public, he will bury us in litigation. He will claim national security, executive privilege, classified sources and methods. And while that fight drags on for years, every family we saved gets investigated. ICE will have a field day. Then what do? James heard the frustration in his own voice. "We just let him get away with it?" Tom stood, paced to the window. "Coleman knows we have the records. He is the one who sent people to break into David's apartment. He is the one who has been watching this house. He knows we are meeting right now, probably, and he is waiting to see what we do." "Let him come," James said. "Let him try to threaten us face to face." "That is exactly what he is counting on," Frank replied. "He wants us to make the first move, to do something reckless that he can use against us. The man is 71 years old, but sharp as a knife. He has been playing this game since before most of us knew it existed." The room fell silent. 7 people, all of them with skin in the game, all of them trying to find a path between justice and protection, between truth and survival. David cleared his throat. "There might be another way. I have a contact at the Justice Department, someone who handles cases involving intelligence community misconduct. If we give them the documents confidentially, they could investigate Coleman without making the refugee network public. And you trust this person? Frank's skepticism was evident. I trust that they hate corruption more than they love bureaucracy. But it would mean giving up control of the story, letting the government handle it internally, which means it might never see daylight, Tom said. Internal investigations have a way of getting buried when politically inconvenient. James looked at each face around the table. These were men who had fought in jungles and mountains, who had seen friends die, who had come home and tried to do good in a world that rarely rewarded goodness. And now, in their final years, they were being asked to choose between revenge and mercy, between justice and peace. I need to talk to him, James said. To Coleman, face to face, before we decide anything. That is a bad idea, Frank warned. The man is dangerous. So am I. The words hung in the air. James meant them. He had killed in Fallujah, had looked men in the eyes and pulled the trigger because that was what war demanded. He was not the same scared kid Coleman had recruited 34 years ago. He was a man who had walked through fire and come out the other side still standing. I will set it up, David said. Give me 24 hours. The meeting broke up, the veterans dispersing into the cold afternoon. Anna caught James on the porch. You should not go alone. I have to. This is between him and me. He recruited me. He used my father. This needs to end with the men it started with. And if he threatens you, if he tries to hurt you. James smiled without humor. Then he will find out that some lessons from the Marines stick. That night, James could not sleep. He sat in Bobby's chair, the house dark around him, thinking about the photograph in his wallet. Rosa and Bobby and baby Anna, frozen in 1983, before everything went wrong. His father had spent 40 years trying to make right a choice made in a moment, had sacrificed everything, his marriage, his relationship with his son, his peace of mind, all for a woman and child he loved but could not protect. And Coleman had built a fortune on that love, on the desperation of people like Rosa and Anna, turning human suffering into profit margins and intelligence reports. The phone rang at 2 a.m. David's voice was tight with tension. He agreed to meet. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. at his office in Boston. He says, come alone or do not come at all. I will be there. James, be careful. This man has made a career out of manipulation. Do not let him get in your head. Too late for that. He has been in my head since I was 18. James drove to Boston through morning traffic, the city sprawling and gray under winter clouds. Coleman's office was in a glass tower downtown, the kind of building that spoke of money and power in every reflective surface. The lobby was all marble and modern art, security guards checking IDs with professional courtesy. He took the elevator to the 23rd floor. The receptionist, a young woman with a polite smile, directed him to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Richard Coleman stood with his back to the door, hands clasped behind him, staring out at the water. He was tall, still fit despite his age, silver-haired and distinguished in an expensive suit. When he turned, James recognized him immediately. Older, more polished, but the same calculating eyes that had looked at him across a recruiting desk in 1990. James Mitchell. Coleman's voice was smooth, cultured, the voice of someone who had learned to sound trustworthy. You have grown into a fine man. I knew you would when I recruited you. Saw something in you. That hunger for purpose. You used me, used my father, used hundreds of desperate people. Coleman gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Let's have a civilized conversation. James remained standing. I am not here to be civilized. I am here to understand why. Why? Coleman moved to his desk, poured himself a scotch from a crystal decanter. Did not offer James any, because it was necessary. The Cold War did not end when the Berlin Wall fell, Mitchell. It just moved, became more subtle. We needed intelligence on leftist movements, on how they operated in diaspora communities. Operation Safe Haven gave us that. Your father and his friends gave us access we never could have gotten through official channels. They thought they were saving lives. They were saving lives. That is what made it work so well. The best covers are the ones that are real, that have genuine humanitarian purpose. We funded their operation, they did their good work, and occasionally we recruited someone useful. Everyone won, except the people you turned into unwitting informants, except the men like my father who took blood money to keep quiet. Coleman's expression hardened slightly. but something flickered behind his eyes. Not quite regret, but something close, recognition perhaps, of a younger version of himself who had believed in simpler certainties. Your father was not some innocent victim. He knew exactly what we were doing. Not at first, maybe, but by 1995, by 1996, he knew. Frank Delgado knew. They all knew. And they kept taking our money because it let them save more people. They made their choice, Mitchell. They chose the many over the few. So you are saying my father was complicit. I am saying your father was pragmatic. He understood that in the real world, purity of purpose is a luxury most of us cannot afford. He did more good by working with us than he ever could have done alone. Coleman turned back to the window, and for a moment, his reflection showed something James had not expected. Weariness. The weight of decades of moral compromise. You think I enjoyed it? Coleman's voice was quieter now. Using good men like pawns. I was 27 when I started in the agency, fresh out of the military, full of ideals about protecting America. They taught me that protection requires sacrifice, that sometimes you have to get your hands dirty to keep other people's clean. I believed it then. I still believe it now. And the money? The $3 million you made? Coleman turned back, his jaw tightening. I earned that money. Every dollar. You think intelligence work is just glamorous spy games? I spent years in places where one wrong word could get me killed. I recruited assets. I ran networks. I kept America safe while people like you slept soundly at night. The money was compensation for services rendered, nothing more. It was blood money, built on the suffering of refugees. It was pragmatism, something your generation seems to have forgotten. You want to live in a world of black and white, good and evil, heroes and villains. The real world does not work that way. The real world is compromise and calculation, and doing what is necessary even when it makes you sick. James stepped closer to the desk, his hands clenched. And when the investigation started in 1998, when you had Frank Delgado beaten half to death to keep him quiet, Coleman's face showed no emotion, but his fingers tightened around his glass. That was unfortunate. Frank was going to go public, was going to expose the entire network. We had to send a message. It was not personal. You had a man beaten until he nearly died, and you call it not personal? It was business. We offered a settlement, $500,000 per participant, confidentiality agreements, and everyone walks away clean. Your father took the deal. They all took the deal, because they understood that the alternative was worse. The families they saved would have been investigated, possibly deported. The network would have been dismantled. Everything they built would have been destroyed. I gave them a way to protect the people they loved. They should have thanked me. James pulled out his phone, set it on the desk. The recording app showed 42 minutes of conversation captured. Coleman looked at the phone, then at James, and laughed. But there was no humor in it, only a hollow sound that spoke of too many years playing this game. You think that matters? You think anyone will care about a recording obtained without consent? Probably inadmissible in any court. You think the Justice Department will prosecute a former intelligence officer based on an illegal recording made by a veteran with documented service trauma who has an axe to grind? The words hit like a physical blow. James forced himself to stay calm. I do not have PTSD. Do not you? Coleman stood, moved around the desk. 2 tours in Iraq, saw combat, lost friends, came home to a failed marriage and an estranged son. Textbook symptoms. And if you go public with this, that is exactly what my lawyers will say. That you are an unstable veteran who has constructed a conspiracy theory around your father's death because you cannot accept that he kept secrets from you. Coleman moved to pour himself another scotch, and James saw his hand shake slightly. Just for a moment. A crack in the armor. You know what keeps me up at night, Mitchell? Coleman's voice was barely above a whisper. Not the operations, not the money, not even the men like Frank who got hurt. It is knowing that in 20 years, someone like you will sit in front of someone like me and have this exact same conversation. Different war, different refugees, but the same moral calculus, the same impossible choices. And they will hate me just like you do, without understanding that I was trying to do what I thought was right. You are not the victim here. No. But neither am I the villain you want me to be. I am just a man who served his country the only way he knew how, Who made choices that let him sleep at night, or tried to? Who took money because the government was offering it, and I had bills to pay and a family to support? Who hurt people because the mission required it, and I believed the mission was worth it? Coleman sat down heavily in his chair, suddenly looking his 71 years. I have a son too, you know, about your age. We do not talk either. He thinks I am a monster. Maybe he is right. Maybe you are both right. But I did what I did believing it would keep people safe. Keep America safe. If I was wrong about that, I have been wrong about everything my entire life, and I am not ready to accept that yet. The room fell silent. James looked at this man, this recruiter turned CIA officer turned defense contractor, and saw not a cartoon villain, but a human being who had made terrible choices for what he believed were good reasons. It did not make those choices right, but it made them understandable. James picked up his phone, put it back in his pocket. You are right. This recording means nothing, but it tells me everything I needed to know. And what is that? That you are not afraid of the law. You are not afraid of the press. You are not afraid of anything official because you have spent decades insulating yourself from consequences. But I am not the law. I am not the press. I am just a man whose father you destroyed. And men like me do not need courts to deliver justice. Coleman's expression shifted, uncertainty flickering across his features for the first time. Is that a threat? It is a fact. You made a career out of exploiting people who had no power, no resources, no way to fight back. But my father left me something. He left me the truth. And I am going to make sure that truth destroys you, even if I have to burn everything down to do it. You would hurt the families your father saved just to get revenge on me? The question stopped James cold, because that was the trap, was not it? The impossible choice. Expose Coleman and risk 200 innocent people being investigated, deported, destroyed. Or let Coleman walk away clean. Let him keep his fortune and his reputation, while Bobby rotted in the ground carrying shame that was not his to bear. Coleman saw the hesitation and pressed his advantage. You are a good man, Mitchell. I can see that. You want to do the right thing, but the right thing here is to walk away. Let the past stay buried. Your father made his peace with it. You should too. James turned toward the door, then stopped. My father never made peace with it. It ate him alive until the day he died. He sat in his house surrounded by ghosts and guilt, unable to tell his son the truth, unable to forgive himself for the compromises he made. You did that to him. You and your mission and your blood money. He opened the door. Where are you going? Coleman's voice carried an edge of worry now. To talk to the families my father saved, to ask them what they think I should do. Because unlike you, I do not make decisions that affect people's lives without asking them first. James left, rode the elevator down in silence, walked out into the cold Boston afternoon. His phone rang before he reached his truck. David Park. How did it go? He is everything we thought. Arrogant, protected, convinced he is untouchable, but also broken, carrying his own weight. So what do? We give the families a choice. We tell them the truth about Operation Safe Haven, about the CIA, about Coleman, and we let them decide if exposing him is worth the risk. James, that is 200 people scattered across the country. We do not have time to reach them all. Then we start with the ones we can reach. Anna can contact the Central American community. Frank and the others can reach out to the families they know personally. We tell them what is at stake, and we let them vote. And if they say no, if they say their safety is more important than justice, then we bury it. We destroy the documents, we take Bobby's secrets to our graves, and we let Coleman win. David was quiet for a moment. That is not what I expected you to say. It is not what I expected to say either. But my father spent 40 years protecting these people. I'm not going to betray that in my first week of knowing they exist. Over the next 72 hours, James and Anna became ghosts moving through Central American communities in Massachusetts, California, Texas, Oregon. They sat in living rooms with families who had built American lives from nothing. They explained the truth about Operation Safe Haven, about the CIA's involvement, about Richard Coleman's exploitation. And they asked a simple question: do you want us to expose him? The answers were complicated, painful, human. A woman in San Jose, now 65, who had been smuggled out of El Salvador with her 3 children in 1993, wept when she heard the truth. But when asked what James should do, she said, "I have grandchildren who were born here. They are American. I will not risk that. Let the past stay buried." A man in Houston, a former Salvadoran army translator, reacted differently. He stood in his garage surrounded by American flags and photographs of his military service. "This Coleman, he used us, made profit from our suffering. Then he must face justice. Do what you must do. I am not afraid anymore." Some families did not want to be involved at all, wanted James and Anna to leave and never contact them again. Others asked questions for hours, trying to understand how the rescue had been tangled up in Cold War espionage. By the end of 3 days, they had reached 87 families. 43 said expose Coleman regardless of consequences. 31 said, "Protect our safety above all else." 13 wanted time to think. James sat in a hotel room in Houston, exhausted, and called Frank. "The votes are split. No clear consensus." Frank's voice was heavy. "I talked to the other veterans. Tom, Carlos, Walter. We took a vote too. 3-1 in favor of exposure." "We are old men, Mitchell. What do we have to lose? Let the truth come out. Let it fall where it falls." And the families who said no? The ones who are terrified of losing everything? "We cannot save everyone. Your father taught me that. Sometimes you save who you can, and you live with the rest." James ended the call, sat staring at the wall. Anna entered from the adjoining room, carrying coffee. "I heard." She sat beside him. "What are you thinking?" I am thinking my father was smarter than all of us. He kept the documents but never used them. Held them as insurance but never cashed in. He understood that having the power to destroy Coleman was more useful than actually destroying him. "So we do the same?" James shook his head. "No, because Coleman knows we have the documents now, knows we are talking to families, building a coalition. He is not going to wait for us to make a move. He is going to strike first." The words proved prophetic. That night, as James slept fitfully in his hotel room, his phone exploded with notifications. News alerts, text messages, emails, all saying the same thing in different words. Richard Coleman had called a press conference, was giving a statement about his decades of service to the intelligence community, was announcing the formation of a new foundation to help refugee families with legal fees and citizenship issues, was being hailed as a humanitarian and a patriot. And buried in the coverage, a single line that made James's blood run cold. When asked about recent allegations of misconduct, Coleman stated that disgruntled individuals were attempting to smear his reputation, but he remained confident the truth would prevail. David called at 6 a.m. He is getting ahead of the story, positioning himself as the victim before we can expose him as the villain. It is brilliant and it is terrifying. Can we counter it? Not without proof we are willing to make public. And if we make Bobby's documents public now, we look like the vendetta-driven conspiracy theorist Coleman is painting us as. Then he wins. Not yet, but we are running out of time and options. James sat on the edge of the bed, the phone heavy in his hand. Outside, Houston was waking up. Traffic building, people heading to work, to school, to lives that would continue whether Coleman faced justice or not. Anna appeared in the doorway. I saw the news. He outplayed us, turned himself into a hero before we could call him a villain. Then we changed tactics. We stop trying to destroy him and start trying to contain him. How? We offer him a deal. He sets up his foundation, makes it real, funds it with his own money. $10 million minimum. He helps every family from Operation Safe Haven with legal issues, citizenship problems, anything they need. In exchange, we keep the documents sealed. We do not expose the CIA connection. We let him have his reputation. That is letting him buy his way out. Anna's expression hardened. My mother died 3 days ago. She spent 40 years running from her past. I will not let her memory be used to make Coleman richer or more powerful, but I also will not risk the families she was part of. This way, something good comes from the evil. Bobby's network gets protected. Coleman pays a price even if it is not the one we want, and we keep the leverage of those documents in case he ever steps out of line. James thought about it. About Bobby sitting at the kitchen table, making the same calculation in 1998. accepting money not as a bribe but as restitution, choosing to protect the living over punishing the guilty. How do we propose this without looking weak? We do not propose it. We make it non-negotiable. Either he funds the foundation or we release everything. His choice. But we set the terms. James looked at his sister, this woman he had known for less than a week, and saw steel wrapped in silk. She was Bobby's daughter in every way that mattered. Let's do it. The second meeting with Richard Coleman happened not in his glass tower, but in neutral territory, a private dining room at a hotel in downtown Boston. James arrived first, with Anna and Frank flanking him like an honor guard. David Park sat at the far end of the table, laptop open, ready to document whatever agreement they reached or whatever battle was about to unfold. Coleman entered exactly on time, accompanied by two lawyers in expensive suits who radiated the kind of confidence that came from never losing. He looked at the assembled group with an expression that might have been amusement or respect, hard to tell which. "Quite a delegation," he said, taking the seat directly across from James. "I assume you have thought carefully about what you want to say." James placed a folder on the table between them. Inside were copies of the documents David had obtained, the financial records, the operational reports, everything that proved Coleman's exploitation of Operation Safe Haven. "We could release these tomorrow. Send them to every major news outlet, every member of Congress, every veterans organization in the country. Your reputation would be destroyed by the weekend." Coleman did not even glance at the folder. "But you will not, because doing so would expose the families you claim to want to protect. We have been over this. That is why we are offering you an alternative." Anna leaned forward, her voice calm but carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "You set up the foundation you announced. Make it real. Fund it with $10 million of your own money. You ensure that every family from Operation Safe Haven, all 217 of them, has access to legal help, citizenship assistance, whatever they need for the rest of their lives. You do this publicly, make yourself the face of refugee support. Play the hero you pretend to be." Coleman's lawyer started to speak, but Coleman raised a hand, silencing him. "And in exchange? In exchange, the documents stay sealed. We do not expose the CIA connection. We do not reveal your profiteering. You get to keep your reputation, your board seats, your comfortable life, but you pay for it. $10 million is not even a quarter of what you made from these operations. Consider it restitution." "This is blackmail. This is justice," Frank said, his voice rough with decades of cigarettes and anger. "You used us. You used desperate people. You made millions while we carried the guilt. Bobby Mitchell died never telling his son the truth because of you. Rosa died in a hospice bed, never able to tell her full story because of you. You do not get to walk away clean. You pay or you burn." Coleman studied each of them in turn, his expression unreadable. One of his lawyers leaned in, whispered urgently in his ear. Coleman listened, nodded, then waved the man away. $5 million, Coleman said, not 10. $5 million over 5 years. And I choose the board members of the foundation. I control how the money is spent. $10 million, Anna countered, within 1 year. And the board includes representatives from the refugee community, people who actually understand what these families need. You can be chairman, you can have your name on the building, but you do not get sole control of the money. Coleman's jaw tightened. "This is not negotiable." "Then we walk," James said, standing. "Release everything tomorrow. Let the chips fall where they may." He moved toward the door. Anna and Frank followed. David began packing his laptop. "Wait." James stopped but did not turn around. $7 million, 2 years. Board includes refugee representatives, but I maintain majority vote. James looked at Anna. She met his gaze, a silent conversation passing between them. They could keep pushing, could demand the full 10. But Coleman was right about one thing. They were not professional negotiators. They were a trauma surgeon, a retired electrician, and a group of old veterans. They had gotten further than anyone had a right to expect. $8 million, James said, turning back. 18 months. Board has equal representation, refugees and your people. Decisions require majority vote from both sides. And David Park writes the announcement story, makes sure the foundation's purpose and funding are public record. Coleman stared at him for a long moment. Then he stood, buttoned his suit jacket with precise, controlled movements. You drive a hard bargain, Mitchell. Your father would be proud. Do not talk about my father. You do not have that right. Coleman's expression flickered, something that looked almost like genuine regret passing across his features before his professional mask returned. 8 million, 18 months, equal board. I want the documents destroyed once the first payment clears. The documents stay sealed but not destroyed, Anna said. Insurance, in case you decide our deal is not worth keeping. Coleman looked at his lawyers. They nodded reluctantly. Then we have an agreement. I will have my people drop the papers. Already done, David said, pulling out a contract from his bag. I took the liberty of having an attorney draft this based on likely negotiation outcomes. Just need signatures. The lawyers spent 20 minutes reviewing the document, suggesting minor changes in language, protecting their clients' interests. But the core remained. $8 million to establish the Operation Safe Haven Family Support Foundation. Equal board representation. Public announcement within 1 week. Documents to remain sealed as long as Coleman met the terms. When the signatures were complete, Coleman stood and extended his hand to James. No hard feelings? James looked at the offered hand, then at Coleman's face. I will never forgive you for what you did to my father, for the years he spent carrying guilt that should have been yours. But I will honor this agreement because it is what he would have wanted. Protection for the families he saved. That matters more than my feelings. He left the hand hanging in the air, turned, and walked out. Anna and Frank followed, leaving Coleman standing with his lawyers in the empty dining room. Outside, the winter sun was setting, painting the Boston skyline in shades of amber and gold. James stood on the sidewalk, breathing in cold air that burned his lungs and made him feel alive. You did good in there, Frank said, clapping him on the shoulder. Bobby would have been proud. Hell, I am proud. It does not feel like winning. Because it is not, Anna said. It is compromise. It is choosing the possible over the perfect. But it is also $8 million that will help people who need help. That is not nothing. David joined them, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. I will write the story tonight. Have it ready for publication once Coleman makes the official announcement. It will not be the expose I wanted, but it will still tell people about Operation Safe Haven, about the families saved, about the continuing need for support. Leave my father's name out of it, James said, and Rosa's, and anyone else who cannot consent to being in the story. Focus on the foundation, on the present and future, not the past. David nodded. I can do that. What? They parted ways on the sidewalk, each heading toward different futures, but bound by this moment, this choice, this compromise that felt both like victory and defeat. James and Anna drove back to Maine in silence, the landscape rolling past the windows in shades of white and gray. When they reached Willowbrook, the sun had set completely, leaving only the glow of streetlights and the occasional lit window. Come in, James said when they reached the house on Maple Lane. There is something I want to show you. Inside, he led her up to the attic, to the hidden room. But this time, instead of going through the documents, he pulled down a box marked personal. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written by Bobby over the years but never sent. He was going to mail these to me, James said, holding up envelopes addressed in his father's handwriting. Every year on my birthday. Started in 1991, stopped in 2023. 32 years of letters, all sealed, all waiting. Did you read them? Not yet. I wanted to wait until this was finished, until I knew how the story ended. He opened the first one, dated August 15th, 1991, James's 19th birthday. Dear James, it began. You have been a Marine for 1 year now. I wonder if you understand yet what that means. Not the uniform or the title, but the weight. The weight of knowing that your decisions might cost lives. The weight of carrying secrets because revealing them would hurt people you are trying to protect. The weight of doing what is right even when no one will thank you for it. I carry that weight every day. And I know one day you will too. I am sorry for that. Sorry that I could not shield you from it. But I am proud that you are strong enough to bear it. Your father, Bobby. James's voice broke on the last words. Anna took the letter gently from his hands, read it herself, then set it aside and pulled out another. This one was from 2003, the year James returned from his first tour in Iraq. Dear James, you made it home. I saw it on your service record, the one I am not supposed to have access to but paid a friend to get for me. You earned a commendation for valor, saved 3 Marines under fire. I am not surprised. You have always been braver than me, but I hope you also learned something I took too long to understand. Bravery is not just running into fire. Sometimes it is sitting with the weight of what you have seen, what you have done, and not letting it destroy you. Come home, son. Not to this house if you cannot, but come home to yourself. Do not let the war take everything. Your father, Bobby. They read through the letters together. 32 years of a father reaching out to a son who would not answer. 32 years of love wrapped in regret and hope, and the kind of wisdom that only comes from making hard choices and living with the consequences. The final letter, dated August 15, 2023, 2 months before Bobby died, was the shortest. Dear James, I am dying. The doctors give me weeks, maybe a month. I am not afraid of death. I am afraid of leaving you with questions I never answered. So I built you a room full of answers. In the attic, behind the wall. I hope you find it. I hope you understand. And I hope one day you can forgive an old man who loved you more than he knew how to say. Your father, always, Bobby. James folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope. His hands were shaking. He wanted me to find all of this. The documents, the truth about Rosa and you, everything. It was not an accident. It was a gift. A heavy gift, Anna said softly. The kind that changes you. Yeah, the kind that changes you. They sat in the attic as night deepened around them. 2 people who had been strangers a week ago, but who were now bound by blood and secrets and the shared weight of their father's legacy. What will you do now? Anna asked. Stay in Willowbrook? Go back to Phoenix? I do not know. This house, it is full of ghosts, but they are not haunting me anymore. They are just memories now, good and bad and complicated like everything else. You could sell it, start fresh somewhere else. James looked around the hidden room, at the shelves that held 217 stories of survival, at the flag of El Salvador, at the photograph of Bobby and Rosa young and in love before the world broke them. No. I think I will stay. Turn the house into something useful. Maybe a place where veterans can come, can talk about the weight they carry. A place where people understand that doing the right thing is not always simple or clean. Bobby built this house with his own hands. Seems wrong to let it go to strangers. Anna smiled. He would like that, knowing his house was still helping people. What about you? Back to Seattle? Yes, back to my family, my work, but I will visit. Often. If that is okay. You are my sister. You are always welcome. The word sister hung in the air between them, still strange, still new, but feeling more right with each repetition. They descended from the attic together. James made coffee, and they sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Bobby had done his crosswords and counted his regrets and tried to find a way to be both the man he wanted to be and the man circumstances had made him. Tell me about your son, Anna said. Tom, right? I need... James's expression tightened. We do not talk much. He thinks I was a bad father, distant, too caught up in my own problems to be there for him. Were you? The question was direct, unsparing. Very Anna, very Bobby. Yeah, I was. I came back from Iraq angry at everything, took it out on my wife, on Tom. By the time I figured out how to be human again, they were gone. Tom was in college, wanted nothing to do with me. Cannot say I blame him. Then maybe it is time to stop blaming yourself and start reaching out. Not for forgiveness, just for connection. I do not know if you would answer. You did not know if I would answer either. But here we are. James pulled out his phone, stared at his son's contact information. Tom Mitchell, 25 years old, living in Denver, working in software engineering, living a life James knew almost nothing about because he had been too proud or too scared or too damaged to ask. He started typing, deleted it, started again. Tom, this is your dad. I know we have not talked in a long time. I know I was not the father you deserved, but I am in Maine, dealing with Grandpa Bobby's estate, and I have been learning things about him, about our family, that I wish I had known sooner. I would like to tell you about it sometime. If you are willing to listen, no pressure, just an offer. Dad. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Anna reached across the table, squeezed his hand. That is brave. That is terrifying. Sometimes they are the same thing. 3 days later, James stood in the cemetery again at Bobby's grave. The snow had melted in a brief warm spell, revealing brown grass and the gray granite headstone. Frank stood beside him, along with Tom Brennan and Carlos Martinez. Anna had flown back to Seattle, but had sent flowers, white roses that now lay at the base of the stone. We did it, Frank said. The foundation is official. Coleman made the announcement yesterday. $8 million, equal board. David's story is running in tomorrow's paper. Bobby would be pleased. Would he? James asked. We let Coleman off easy. He gets to play the hero while Bobby stays in the ground with his secrets. Your father did not want to be a hero, Carlos said. He wanted the families to be safe. Mission accomplished. Tom nodded. We all carry weight, Mitchell. Bobby taught us that. The trick is not to carry it alone. You distribute the load. That is what we did with Coleman. Made him carry some of the weight he should have been carrying all along. James looked at the three old warriors, men who had fought in Central America and come home, and tried to do good in a world that rarely rewarded goodness. They were in their 70s now, their bodies failing, their time running short. But they stood straight, shoulders back, eyes forward. Marines to the end. Thank you, James said, for everything you did. For my father, for the families, for carrying the weight when no one else would. Frank smiled. That is what brothers do. They left him alone at the grave. James crouched down, ran his fingers over the carved letters of his father's name. I read your letters. All 32 of them. You were right about the weight, about how hard it is to do what is right when right is complicated. I understand now why you stayed silent, why you took Coleman's money, why you kept the secrets. You were protecting people who could not protect themselves. That is what Marines do. A cold wind blew through the cemetery, rattling the bare branches of the oak trees. James stood, his knees protesting. I am going to try to be a better man, a better father, not perfect, because you taught me perfect is not possible, but better. I am going to reach out to Tom, really reach out, keep trying even if he pushes back. I am going to take care of Anna, make sure she knows she has family, and I am going to use this house you built. Use it to help other veterans carry their weight. He paused, throat tight. I forgive you, Dad. For the silence, for the distance, for all of it. And I hope, wherever you are, you have found Rosa again. Hope you two finally have the peace you deserved. His phone buzzed, a text message from Tom. Dad, I would like to hear about Grandpa Bobby. And about you. Maybe I could visit Maine next month, if that works for you. James read the message 3 times, making sure it was real. Then he typed back with shaking hands. Next month works. I will be here. I am not going anywhere. He added, I love you, son. I know I have not said it enough, but I do. The response came quickly. I know, Dad. Love you too. James stood at his father's grave, holding his phone like a lifeline, tears streaming down his face in the cold. Around him, the cemetery was silent except for the wind. But it did not feel empty. It felt full of presence, of connection, of the invisible threads that bound fathers to sons across generations. A month later, Tom arrived on a Friday evening, driving up from Boston in a rental car. James watched from the porch as his son climbed out, taller than James remembered, broader in the shoulders, with the same stubborn jaw Bobby had passed down through 3 generations. They stood looking at each other across the snow-covered driveway. 2 men who shared blood and history and 30 years of accumulated hurt. Tom broke the silence first. House looks good. You have been fixing it up. Trying to. Learning as I go. Your grandfather taught himself carpentry. I am doing the same. He would have liked that. They went inside. James had spent the last week cleaning, repairing, making the house presentable. Not perfect, but better. Always better. Over dinner, James told Tom everything. About Rosa and Anna, about Operation Safe Haven, about Coleman and the foundation, about Bobby's letters and the weight he had carried and the impossible choices he had made. Tom listened without interrupting, his expression shifting from surprise to understanding, to something that looked like recognition. So Grandpa kept secrets to protect people, Tom said finally, and you kept your distance from me to protect me from your anger and your pain. James met his son's eyes. I told myself that. Convinced myself I was doing you a favor by staying away. But really, I was just scared. Scared of being a bad father. Scared of hurting you the way I felt hurt. So I did nothing. And that hurt you worse. Yeah, Tom said quietly. It did. I am sorry. I cannot change the past, but I can try to do better going forward, if you will let me. Tom was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Anna, my aunt. Can I meet her? She is coming for Christmas, 3 weeks from now. You could stay, be here when she arrives, get to know your family. I would like that. They spent the weekend together, father and son, working on the house. James taught Tom how to replace rotted boards on the porch, how to measure twice and cut once, how to build something that would last. They did not talk about the hard things much, did not need to. The work said what words could not. On Sunday, before Tom left, James took him up to the attic, showed him the hidden room. This is where Grandpa kept the truth about who he was, what he did, the people he saved. Tom stood in the small space, looking at the shelves, the documents, the flag, the photographs. You are going to keep it? Keep all of this? Yeah, it is part of our history now, the weight we carry. Can I help? Tom asked. Cut. With the house, with the foundation, with whatever you are building here? James felt something unlock in his chest, something that had been sealed tight for years. I would like that a lot. Christmas came cold and bright, the kind of New England winter day that made everything look clean and possible. Anna arrived with her husband and 2 children, teenagers who were shy at first, but warmed up when they realized their Uncle James had no interest in being formal or distant. Frank came, bringing Carlos and Tom Brennan. David Park stopped by with a copy of his book just published about refugee networks and the veterans who ran them. The dedication read, "For Bobby Mitchell and all those who carried the weight in silence." They gathered in Bobby's house, 3 generations connected by blood and choice, and the legacy of a man who had tried to do right in a world that made right complicated. As evening fell, James stood on the porch, watching his family through the window. Tom and Anna's children were playing cards at the kitchen table, laughing at something. Anna was helping her husband set the table, the 2 of them moving in the comfortable rhythm of long partnership. Frank and the other veterans sat in the living room, telling old stories, their voices rising and falling like a familiar song. This was what Bobby had wanted, James understood now. Not perfection, not resolution of all conflicts. Just people choosing to show up, to connect, to carry the weight together instead of alone. Tom joined him on the porch, handed him a beer. It is a good house, Tom said. Feels solid, like it could last another 100 years. Your grandfather built it to last. Built everything to last, even when he thought it was falling apart. They drank in comfortable silence, father and son, watching snow begin to fall in the gathering darkness. Inside, someone started playing the piano, an old upright that had sat silent for years. Anna's daughter, her fingers finding notes that turned into a melody James did not recognize, but felt in his bones. You know, Tom said, I always thought Grandpa Bobby was this cold, distant guy. But hearing his story, seeing this place, I get it now. He was not cold. He was careful, protecting everyone around him, even if it meant they did not understand him. Like me, James said. Like you, Tom agreed. But you are here now. Present. That is what matters. I'm trying. I know, I see it. The front door opened, and Anna appeared, her coat wrapped tight against the cold. Dinner is ready. You 2 going to stand out here all night? Just appreciating the view, James said. The view is the same from inside, and it is warmer. They went in together, into the light and warmth and noise of family. The table was crowded, mismatched chairs pulled in from other rooms, but everyone fit. James sat at the head, the place Bobby used to occupy, and looked at the faces around him. Before we eat, he said, raising his glass, I want to make a toast to Bobby Mitchell, a man who was not perfect, but who tried, who made hard choices and lived with the consequences, who saved 217 lives and only asked that they be remembered, who gave us all a legacy worth carrying. To Bobby, the group echoed, glasses rising. And to Rosa, Anna added, her voice breaking slightly, who survived impossible odds, who loved fiercely and forgave freely, who taught us that family is not just blood, but choice. To Rosa, they drank and then they ate, and the house on Maple Lane filled with the sound of living people making new memories on top of old ones. Later, after everyone had gone home or gone to bed, James returned to the attic one final time. He had one more letter to write, one more message to leave for whoever came after. He sat in Bobby's chair, a legal pad on his knee, and began. To whoever finds this room, my name is James Mitchell. I am Bobby Mitchell's son. If you are reading this, it means this house has passed to someone else, and they have discovered my father's secret. Let me tell you what you need to know. He wrote about Operation Safe Haven, about the families saved, about Coleman and the foundation, about the choice to protect the innocent over punishing the guilty, about the weight that good men carry so others do not have to. He wrote about Rosa and Anna, about Tom, about the way family expands to hold whoever is willing to show up and do the hard work of loving imperfect people. And he wrote about the house itself, the structure Bobby had built with his own hands, that had sheltered refugees and secrets and 3 generations of Mitchells. This house stands for something, he wrote. It stands for the idea that ordinary people can do extraordinary things if they are willing to pay the price. That silence is sometimes the bravest choice. That love does not always look like we expect it to, but it is still love. If you have found this room, you have also found a responsibility to protect the stories here, to honor the people who pass through, to understand that some secrets are not meant to be exposed, but to be held sacred. My father carried this weight for 40 years. I have carried it for 1. Now it passes to you. Carry it well. Carry it with honor. And know that you are not alone. Others have walked this path before you. Others will walk it after. That is what legacy means. Not perfection, not fame, just the quiet work of doing right and trusting that it matters. Your friend in this burden, James Mitchell. December 25th, 2024. He sealed the letter in an envelope, placed it in the box with Bobby's unsent letters, and returned everything to its place on the shelf. Then he descended from the attic, pulled up the ladder, closed the panel. The hidden room returned to darkness, waiting for the next person who would need its truth. James walked through the house, turning off lights, checking locks, doing the small rituals of closing up for the night. In Tom's old bedroom, his son slept, breathing deep and even. In the guest room, Anna's family was settled, their presence making the house feel alive in a way it had not been in years. He stood at his bedroom window, looking out at Maple Lane. Snow covered everything, making the world look new and clean and full of possibility. Somewhere under that snow, in graves and memories, and the spaces between what was said and what was meant, Bobby Mitchell and Rosa Flores rested together at last. James touched the cold glass, his breath fogging it. We did it, Dad. We protected the families. We made Coleman pay a price. We kept your legacy alive. Not the way you might have planned, but the best way we could. He thought he felt something then, a presence, a warmth, an acknowledgement. Probably just his imagination. Probably just the old house settling. But he chose to believe it was Bobby, finally at peace, finally able to let go of the weight. James climbed into bed, into the room that had been Bobby's, sleeping in sheets that still smelled faintly of Old Spice and sawdust. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in months, in years maybe, he slept without nightmares. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering Maple Lane in white, covering the past in a blanket that would melt come spring, revealing new ground beneath. Inside, the house stood solid, its secret safe, its purpose renewed. A monument not to perfection, but to the complicated, messy, beautiful work of being human. And somewhere, in the spaces between waking and sleeping, between memory and dream, James heard his father's voice one last time. Well done, son, well done. The weight remained, as it always would. But now James was not carrying it alone. Now he had family, had purpose, had the understanding that some burdens are lighter when shared, and some secrets are more powerful when kept. The house on Maple Lane would stand for another 100 years, sheltering new stories, new families, new weights carried in silence and honor. Because that was what Bobby Mitchell had built. Not just walls and floors and a roof, but a legacy of protection, of sacrifice, of love too complicated to speak, but too strong to break. James slept, and the house watched over him. and the snow fell soft as forgiveness on the ground, where fathers and sons learned, finally, to understand each other across the divide of death and time, and all the words that went unspoken, until it was too late to say them any other way, except through the lives they lived and the choices they made, and the weight they agreed to carry. The end.